Sometimes in life, a woman must stand alone not because she wants to, but because her path requires a different strength, a strength rooted not in crowds but in silence. Society often pushes us to seek validation through friendships and popularity, convincing us that we need others to prove our worth. But a woman who walks alone finds her worth from within and from God, not from the opinions or support of others. In Psalms 465 we read, "God is within her, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day." This verse reminds us that real strength is found in God's presence. When He is within her, she can stand firm even when others fall away. Today, we'll explore the powerful qualities of a woman who walks alone. But before we continue, please give this video a thumbs up so we can keep sharing these messages. Let us dive in. There's a unique strength in walking alone, especially for a woman. Independence and self-sufficiency aren't qualities that just appear, they're forged over time through experiences, trials, and often solitude. A woman who chooses to stand on her own feet without needing the approval of others isn't just surviving, she's thriving. Her strength comes not from those around her, but from within. Our society tends to glorify companionship and togetherness, as though having people constantly by your side is what determines your worth. But a woman who walks alone has discovered that true power lies in self-reliance. She doesn't need a crowd or a tribe to define her purpose or give her direction. Instead, she learns to lean on God, knowing that He alone can supply the strength she needs. This self-sufficiency isn't about rejecting relationships. It's about understanding that relationships don't define her. She knows that she doesn't need friends or validation to know her worth, because her worth is something that is defined by God. Psalm 465 tells us, "God is within hers, she will not fall. God will help her at break of day." In this verse, we see the essence of her strength. She doesn't rely on what people can give her. She relies on what God has already placed within her. When she faces challenges, she doesn't run to others for answers or support. She looks within, trusting her instincts, her resilience, and her experience. She has built this strength over time, and it has set her apart. She doesn't fall apart when people leave her or when circumstances become difficult. Instead, she taps into a deep well of resilience. She understands that the only person she can truly count on, besides God, is herself, and that knowledge gives her unbreakable confidence. This kind of resilience isn't just about enduring, it's about thriving. She has learned to navigate life without constantly needing the affirmation or approval of others. She makes her own decisions, shapes her life, and stands strong in her beliefs, values, and vision. Walking alone requires courage, but it also grants her freedom. It's easy to follow the crowd, to be swept up in what everyone else is doing. But a woman who is self-sufficient is more interested in what's right for her than what's easy. She has the self-awareness and confidence to make choices that align with her true self, even if those choices take her down a solitary path. Through this independence, she finds a new kind of strength, a strength that isn't shaken by the absence of people. Her inner strength grows in her solitude, a power that doesn't waver no matter who comes or goes. For a woman like this, solitude is not an empty space, it's a source of empowerment. It allows her to focus on herself, on her purpose, and on her walk with God. Write in the comments, "I walk with God," to declare that He is your firm foundation. Think of Ruth, who stood alone after her husband died and chose to leave her homeland to stay by Naomi's side. Ruth walked a path of solitude and uncertainty, yet her strength was unwavering because it was rooted in her loyalty, her determination, and her trust in God. In the same way, a woman who values her independence knows that walking alone doesn't make her weak. It makes her strong, self-reliant, and filled with a sense of purpose that doesn't need validation. When God is within her, she knows she will not fall because her strength comes from Him. In solitude, she has space to reflect, to grow, and to listen to God's voice. And in that quiet, She realizes that her worth and strength are gifts that only He can give in a world that's constantly measuring us by the people around us. A woman who walks alone has learned something rare and powerful. She knows her worth, her value isn't defined by how many friends she has, how popular she is, or how many people seek her out. Her worth is something she has discovered deep within, and it doesn't waver based on anyone else's opinion or approval. Society often tells us that we need others to validate us, to make us feel important, but a woman who understands her worth knows that no person can determine her value. She's found that her worth is a reflection of her relationship with God. Of who He says she is, in 1 Peter chapter 9, we're reminded, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." This verse is her foundation, reminding her that she is precious in God's eyes. No one else's opinion matters when she knows that she's chosen, valued, and loved by her Creator. This understanding of self-worth frees her from the pressure to conform or to please others just for the sake of acceptance. She isn't looking for validation in the eyes of people who don't truly see her. Instead, she's learned to define herself by her own values, her faith, and her unique purpose. This kind of confidence allows her to live authentically, without feeling the need to prove herself to anyone. For a woman who knows her worth, relationships are not about filling a void or proving her value. She values quality over quantity, knowing that true friendship is rare and takes time. She's patient, waiting for connections that are meaningful, supportive, and uplifting. She would rather walk alone than surround herself with people who don't align with her values. A woman who knows her worth doesn't fear solitude, because her worth is not based on how many people are around her. She understands that her identity is rooted in God's love, not in social approval. This mindset gives her a deep inner peace. She isn't rushing into relationships or clinging to people out of insecurity. She has the wisdom to recognize when a relationship is no longer healthy or supportive, and she's unafraid to walk away. She doesn't fear letting go because she knows that her value remains intact. No matter who stays or goes, her worth is unshakable, grounded in her identity as God's beloved, in valuing herself. She sets healthy boundaries. She isn't willing to compromise her peace or integrity just to fit in or be accepted. She knows her worth, and so she's selective about who has access to her life. Her self-worth acts as a filter, allowing her to choose relationships that uplift her and bring out her best. She doesn't chase popularity or the appearance of having a large circle. She seeks depth, truth, and authenticity. A woman who knows her worth also has a unique strength to stand firm in her values. She isn't easily swayed by others' opinions or by the pressure to conform. Her self-respect gives her the courage to say no when necessary and to hold true to her convictions. She knows that pleasing people isn't her purpose. Pleasing God is her goal, isn't to blend in, but to live out her calling in a way that honors who she is and the path God has laid before her. Think about the story of Queen Es. She risked her life to stand before the king, not for her own gain, but for a purpose far greater than herself. She knew her worth didn't come from her title as queen or the approval of those around her. Her worth was found in her God-given purpose, and that knowledge gave her the strength to act with courage, even when the stakes were high. In the same way, a woman who knows her worth doesn't settle for less than what aligns with her values and calling. She's willing to walk a lonely path if that's what it takes to live authentically and to honor her identity. In Christ, her self-worth is her guide, helping her make decisions that reflect who she truly is. This understanding of her worth also means that she takes care of herself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. She prioritizes self-care not out of vanity, but as a way to honor the value God has placed in her. She sees herself as worthy of respect, of peace, and of love, and so she invests in her well-being. She's learned that taking care of herself is a reflection shove of her gratitude for the life God has given her. So when a woman understands her worth, she doesn't seek it in the approval of others. She finds it in God's presence in the choir, to assurance that she is enough just as she is. She doesn't need others to validate her or make her feel important, because she already knows her value, and that knowledge gives her a kind of freedom, a freedom to live authentically, to set boundaries, and to walk away from anything that doesn't align with her worth. In the end, a woman who knows her worth has a deep, unshakable sense of identity. She's anchored in the truth that she is loved by God, chosen, and called for a purpose. Her life becomes a testimony to others that true worth isn't found in people or in popularity, but in God's love and purpose for her life. One of the most remarkable qualities of a woman who walks alone is her unwavering trust in God's guidance without the constant input of others or the comfort of a crowd. She has learned to lean into God for direction. She understands that while others may have good intentions, no one's guidance can compare to the wisdom, strength, and clarity that come from God. In her solitude, she discovers that God is her closest companion and her most reliable guide. This trust doesn't develop overnight. It grows out of seasons of dependence on God. Seasons where she has had to walk paths that felt uncertain, even lonely, but where she learned to listen for His voice when she faces decisions, challenges, or moments of doubt. She doesn't rush to seek approval or advice from people around her. Instead, she turns to God in prayer, inviting Him to lead her. Proverbs 3:5-6 speaks to this dependence on God. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight. A woman who trusts in God's guidance doesn't need constant reassurance from others, because she has learned to find her security in God's presence. She understands that people may change, circumstances may shift, but God's faithfulness is a constant. This truth gives her a confidence that isn't easily shaken. She trusts that God's plans for her are good, and that He will direct her steps even if the path isn't always clear. In solitude, she has learned the importance of hearing God's voice. Life is filled with noise, opinions, expectations, and the constant stream of information from the world around us. But solitude creates space for clarity. A woman who walks alone often has fewer distractions, allowing her to develop a sensitivity to God's guidance. She knows that in the quiet, God speaks, and she treasures those moments when she can hear Him without interruption. This practice of listening for God's direction gives her a sense of purpose and confidence in her choices. She no longer needs to look around at what everyone else is doing. Instead, she is focused on what God is calling her to do. She is content with God's unique purpose for her, even if it looks different from the paths others are taking. Her trust in God isn't selective. She doesn't only lean on Him in moments of crisis or when she's at a loss. Her dependence on God is woven into every area of her life when faced with decisions. She prays for wisdom and direction. When confronted with challenges, she asks for strength and peace. Her relationship with God is her foundation, and from that foundation, she finds the courage to keep going, knowing she is never alone. The story of Mary, the mother of Jesus, is a beautiful example of this kind of faith. When the angel told Mary that she would bear the Son of God, she was undoubtedly filled with uncertainty, questions, and perhaps even fear, but her response was simple and full of trust. "I am the Lord's servant," she said. "May your word to me be fulfilled." Luke 1:38. Mary didn't rely on the approval or understanding of others. She put her trust in God's plan, even when it seemed beyond her comprehension. Like Mary, a woman who trusts God's guidance moves forward with faith, even when she doesn't have all the answers. One of the hardest parts of trusting God's guidance is learning to prioritize His voice over the opinions and judgments of others. A woman who walks alone often faces criticism or misunderstanding, because her path looks different from what people expect. But instead of bending to the opinions of others, she stays true to what she knows God has placed in her heart. She understands that the approval of people is fleeting, but the approval of God is eternal. This willingness to follow God's direction, even when others don't understand, takes courage. She may choose a career, a lifestyle, or a ministry path that others don't understand or support. But her confidence isn't rooted in human understanding. It's rooted in her relationship with God. She knows that following God's will is always worth any discomfort, misunderstanding, or isolation she might face along the way. Consider the story of Deborah, the prophet and judge in his Israel. Deborah trusted God's guidance, even when it meant stepping into a role that was uncommon for women. At the time, she led with authority, wisdom, and a deep sense of God's purpose, even when others might have questioned her place. Like Deborah, a woman who trusts God's guidance finds strength in knowing that God has uniquely equipped her for her calling. Regardless of what others might think, trusting in God's guidance often means walking by faith, not by sight. A woman who chooses to walk alone learns to embrace this truth because she knows that God's plans are often bigger than what she can see or understand. In the moment, she has faith that even when the path looks uncertain, God is working behind the scenes, aligning everything for her good. This kind of faith doesn't mean she never experiences doubt or fear. Here, she's human after all. But in moments of uncertainty, she reminds herself of God's promises and clings to His word. She trusts that God's timing is perfect, that He sees what she cannot, and that His plans for her are good even when they don't align with her own expectations. Her life becomes a testament to 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we walk by faith, not by sight. She doesn't need to see the whole picture to trust that God is guiding her. Part of trusting God's guidance is learning to surrender control. A woman who walks alone often has learned to be strong and self-sufficient, but she also knows the importance of yielding to God's will. Trusting in God means letting go of her own plans and embracing His, even if they look different from what she envisioned. She has discovered that true peace comes not from controlling every aspect of her life, but from resting in the knowledge that God is in control. This surrender is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of wisdom. She knows that God's wisdom is higher than hers, and that His perspective is eternal. By placing her trust in Him, she experiences a peace that only comes from surrender. Faith grows as she learns to let go, recognizing that God's plans are far greater than anything she could orchestrate on her own. In trusting God's guidance, a woman finds that her life has a deep sense of purpose. She doesn't need to chase after others' paths or conform to societal expectations because she's focused on fulfilling her God-given calling. Her choices reflect her faith, and she is intentional about where she invests her time, energy, and heart. This kind of trust transforms her life from one of mere survival to one of significance. She lives each day with purpose because she knows that God is directing her steps. Her faith fuels her actions, and her actions bear witness to her trust in God. She is an example to others of what it looks like to live a life led by faith rather than by fear, to move forward with confidence, because she knows who goes before her. When a woman walks alone, her journey may look different, even challenging, but it's one marked by trust. She has placed her confidence in God's guidance, not in her own understanding or the opinions of others. Her strength, her identity, and her purpose all flow from her relationship with Him. She walks by faith, allowing God to shape her path, knowing that as long as He is leading, she is exactly where she needs to be. In the end, her trust in God is what sustains her, empowers her, and sets her apart. She is strong, wise, and confident, not because she has all the answers, but because she knows the one who does. She trusts that He is guiding her every step, and in that trust, she finds her peace, her purpose, and her true freedom. As we've seen, a woman who walks alone carries a strength, self-worth, and a deep trust in God that make her resilient and unshakable. Her strength isn't defined by the people around her, but by the one who lives within her. Her worth isn't dependent on societal standards or the approval of others. It's rooted in her identity as God's beloved, and her path is guided not by popular opinion, but by her unwavering trust in God's wisdom and faithfulness. And for the woman who walks alone, her journey isn't one of isolation or self-sufficiency. Instead, it's a journey of resilience, purpose, and peace anchored in her relationship with God. She is never without companionship, for God is always beside her, guiding her and strengthening her for the journey ahead. Let this be an encouragement for all of us, whether we walk alone or in the company of others. Seek strength in God, know your worth in His love, and trust in His unfailing guidance. May we all find the courage to walk boldly and confidently, knowing that as long as God is with us, we will never walk alone.